By the time you complete this powerful program, you'll have mastered a whole new approach to thinking called mind mapping. Mind mapping is an amazing method for generating and organizing ideas using symbols, keywords, codes, and colors. More than just a new way to take notes, mind mapping is a method for liberating the phenomenal power of your mind. Based on a sophisticated understanding of the structure and function of the brain, mind mapping helps you get more work done in less time, improve your memory, set goals, plan projects, run meetings, and solve problems with ease. And perhaps the best thing about mind mapping is that it makes thinking, planning, and problem solving a lot more fun. I've watched people from every walk of life use this new way of thinking to dramatically improve the quality of their lives. The benefits you're going to realize from these tapes are delightfully summarized by an executive who attended one of my seminars. He wrote afterwards, "Thank you very much for finally waking up my brain." And that's exactly what mind mapping will do for you. By listening to these tapes, completing the exercises I'll give you, and referring to your mind map chart, you'll deliver a wake-up call to your brain, dramatically increasing your productivity, creativity, memory, communication skills, and overall mental prowess. You'll be able to take charge of your life, identify your true goals, and turn them into reality.
Mind mapping is the one simple tool that will most profoundly improve your intelligence. Michael Gelb has seen this fact proven true time and time again during his long collaboration with the originator of mind mapping, Tony Buzan. Michael has been instrumental in developing the state-of-the-art in the teaching of mind mapping. For that reason, he is Tony Buzan's top choice for bringing this amazing technique to you. In fact, Tony is so excited about Michael and this program that he has recorded a special introduction. So here's Tony now to describe what Michael Gelb and the mind mapping program can do for you.
Greetings to you from the English countryside. When I created mind mapping in the 1960s, my dream at that time was to create a mentally literate planet to help people to discover the enormous treasure of their own intelligences. What I needed in order to accomplish that goal were people who were professionally, who were academically, and most importantly, who were personally qualified to learn, to practice, and then to impart the essence of these vital skills. In 1975, I had the privilege and indeed delightful pleasure of meeting Michael J. Gelb. At that stage, early in his career, he was already an established writer and was one of the world's leading authorities in psychophysical re-education. He had also already established himself as an original and an inspired thinker. Since that time, he has grown and become a staggeringly brilliant teacher. He has the gift of inspiring, of motivating, and indeed of transforming those who attend his lectures. The same, in fact, also applies to his writing, his many books, and as you will discover on this tape, it applies also to his ability to communicate on the audio media waves. One of the interesting things about ourselves at the moment is that we tend to think that our brains are worse than they really are. In fact, you're going to discover that your brain is better than you think, and no matter how smart you really think you are, you'll find out on this tape that you're even smarter than that amazing smart. And who better to lead you to discover this treasure of your intelligence than one of the world's leading geniuses, Michael J. Gelb. Michael is going to lead you on a journey through your vast potential. It is one of the most exciting, most exhilarating journeys you will ever go on, and you're about to start it. You're going to discover one of the most extraordinary things in the universe, and that extraordinary thing is you. And you're going to do it with one of the most wonderful, delightful guides you could ever want, Michael J. Gelb. Michael, it's over to you.
To get started, please take a few minutes to complete a thought generation and organization exercise. You'll need a piece of paper, a pen, and about 10 minutes of time. If you're driving, you can do the exercise in your mind's eye now, but be sure to put it in writing later. This exercise is based on a real-life challenge that many of my clients have faced. Ready? Here we go. Imagine you're the chairperson of a conference attended by 100 of your peers. Suddenly, you receive a message that your keynote speaker's flight has been delayed and he'll be unable to appear. There's only one solution. You will have to give the speech. You have just 10 minutes to generate and organize a half-hour speech before you deliver it. The group you'll be addressing is tired of work-related topics, so they've asked you to speak on any subject that interests you besides your work. You can talk about your favorite sport, hobby, or about current events. Anything you like other than your work. And the group has also requested that you make your speech creative in some way. Remember, you've got 10 minutes. Good luck. Turn off the tape and complete this exercise now. Welcome back from your assignment. Did you find it easy, even fun, to generate and organize your thoughts into a creative half-hour speech? If you're like most of the students who've completed this exercise in my high-performance learning classes, your answer is a resounding no. Why not? Obviously, you must have some knowledge about the topic or you wouldn't have chosen it. So there was no shortage of facts to draw on. But perhaps you found it difficult to get started anyway. And maybe it was challenging to generate creative ideas and put them in a sensible order for the sake of communication. What are the thinking challenges in quickly and creatively organizing a speech about a topic of your own choosing? The solution lies in the method most people use to complete this exercise. They try to organize their ideas before they generate them by outlining or listing their thoughts as they were taught to do decades ago in grade school. The problem is that outlining hinders your brain's natural thinking process. It's like trying to drive your car with the emergency brake on. Consider what happens when you outline. You take out a nice lined sheet of paper and put down a big Roman numeral 1. Now, have you ever spent an inordinate amount of time staring at a blank page, waiting for idea Roman numeral 1? As ideas arise, you try to figure out which one comes first. Eventually, you put down idea number 1 and proceed to 1A, B, C, and so on. However, about the time you get to 3B, you realize it should be 2A. So you draw a big arrow and cross out the original 2A. You keep on doing this sort of thing, and suddenly you realize your outline is getting messy and very confusing. And we all know that outlines are supposed to be neat. So you sigh with frustration, tear it up, and start over. At the same time, your right brain hemisphere gets tired of being put on hold while you try so hard to be perfectly logical. It stages a mental mutiny. And next thing you know, you find yourself doodling in the margins or daydreaming about that nice day outside. You may even get really creative and begin thinking of reasons why you don't need to do this work at all. Outlining and other linear noting methods are a reflection of a static, hierarchical mindset. But your brain is designed to operate best in a dynamic, nonlinear way. Think, for example, about the last book you read or the last movie you saw. Imagine that you're going to give a talk on it 10 minutes from now. Watch the process of your mind at work as you begin recalling. Do you get an outline? It's highly unlikely. Most people report a flow of associations, images, keywords, impressions, and emotional reactions that gradually form themselves into a meaningful pattern. Although it's valuable as a tool for presenting ideas in a formal, orderly fashion, outlining is useful only after the real thinking is already done. If you try to generate your ideas in outline form, you'll find it stifles your creativity and slows you down to a snail's pace. The right hemisphere of your brain thrives on color, dimension, synthesis, rhythm, and images. By imposing one color and one form, outlining effectively excludes half your brain from the thinking process. And half a mind is a terrible thing to waste. If outlining, with its slavish adherence to hierarchical thinking, is an outdated skill for today's world, what should take its place? Mind mapping. Mind mapping is to the information explosion and the age of global awareness as outlining was to the Industrial Revolution and the heyday of bureaucracy. Mind mapping frees you from the tyranny of premature organization. And as Roger von Eck writes, premature organization prevents conception. Mind mapping liberates your whole brain by balancing generation and organization while encouraging the full range of mental expression. Mind mapping works because it's based on an understanding of how your brain functions most effectively. It catalyzes and enhances your natural thinking patterns. Let's take a minute to explore these patterns. I'd like you to complete a simple exercise in word association which will help you to experience and understand your natural thinking process in action. On a piece of paper, draw a circle with 10 lines radiating from it. In a moment, I'll give you a word to write in the center of the circle. When I give you that word, immediately jot down the first 10 words that come to mind on the 10 lines. Don't edit or judge your associations. Just write them on the lines as quickly as you can. In a word association exercise, there are no wrong answers. If you're driving a car, simply say your 10 associations aloud and then take some time later to do the exercise again in writing. Okay, the word to write in the center of the circle is set, S-E-T, set. Begin writing the first 10 associations that come to mind on the radiating lines. Stop the tape until you've completed this exercise. Now let's take a moment to consider your answers to the word association exercise. How many do you think would be the same as your spouses, your coworkers, your best friends? The answer is probably fewer than you would guess. Over the years, I've given this test to tens of thousands of people. Then, I asked them to get into groups of 5 and compare answers. It's rare for a group to have much in common at all. In one group, for example, Suzanne's first word was tea because her grandmother had a tea set she remembered from childhood. Catherine's first response was shop because she was setting up her own small retail business. Bob, a fan of racket sports, came up with tennis. Alice wrote down hair because she sets her hair every night. And Joe, a math teacher, thought algebra. The other 9 words were equally diverse among the group members. In fact, not one of them had the same association with the word set. I once gave this exercise to a group of accountants using the word run instead of set. They prided themselves on their uniformity and attributed their widely varied associations with the word run to the fact that they weren't runners, they were accountants. So I asked them to do the exercise again, this time using money as the central word. They were astonished to find that they had even fewer associations in common. This simple exercise illustrates a marvelous truth about you and every other human being who walks the face of this earth. Your associations are utterly unique. Artists, scientists, salespeople, teachers, farmers, lawyers, doctors, and Cajun chefs. Each of us, as the result of our genetic inheritance and individual experience, construes the world in our own unique way. We're gifted from the moment of birth with a special ability to experience and express the magic of being alive. There's no one else like you. There's no one else who can think or create as you do. This diversity is not an accident. It's a critically important part of the evolutionary process designed to ensure our survival as a species. Given any type of adverse circumstance that may befall humanity, there's almost certainly someone who has the unique ability to overcome the challenge and carry on. As well as being unique, our associations are also potentially unlimited. Your mind is capable of linking any word with any other word. Just try to find a word you can't link with the word set. In my classes, people often proudly offer a word they believe to be absolutely unrelatable. But, without fail, a classmate offers their own unique linkage. In a recent seminar, one erudite fellow triumphantly challenged the class to link the word anti-disestablishmentarianism to set. An equally confident classmate shot back, anti-disestablishmentarianism, one of the set of words that are utterly ridiculous. Then, another classmate pointed out that anti-disestablishmentarianism actually contains the letters that make up the word set 2 times over. And of course, As a last resort, you can automatically connect any word with set because it's a member of that class of things you don't normally associate with set. Our unlimited power of association and our unique individuality suggest that each of us has a vast potential for creative thought. We've seen how outlining squelches that potential by cauterizing the freedom of association with premature organization, boxing us into a narrow, inflexible, and colorless format. How can we take advantage of the mind's capacity for unique and unlimited association while balancing the generation and organization of our thoughts? Is there a technique that enables us to access our full creative potential by working with and not against our brain's natural design? These are the questions that my good friend and colleague Tony Buzan was asking himself when he originated mind mapping. A British author, brain researcher, and Renaissance man, Buzan has devoted his life to developing and teaching brain-centered strategies for the fulfillment of human potential. I've been collaborating with Buzan since 1975, refining the extraordinary thinking tool of mind mapping and developing new strategies for teaching it. So with this as background, what is mind mapping and how does it work? A mind map begins with a symbol or picture that represents the topic you're mapping, drawn in the center of a piece of paper. This picture serves as the home base for your creative associations with that topic. As each association arises, you record it in a key word, connecting it to your central image with a radiating line. Colors, codes, and pictures highlight important points and show relationships between different branches of your map. A finished mind map represents a marriage of logic and imagination. It's colorful, strongly imaginative, and magnificently expressive of individuality. Linking keywords and images, the map captures a tremendous amount of information on one page, making it easier to see the whole picture and to think in a more systems-oriented fashion. It also becomes possible to review, adapt, or memorize your notes in seconds. If you study the notebooks of great geniuses like Leonardo da Vinci, Mark Twain, and Charles Darwin, you'll see that they used branching, nonlinear styles with lots of creative doodles, sketches, and keywords. The power of mind mapping is that it formalizes and integrates what a great mind naturally wants to do. As you master mind mapping techniques, you'll be joining the ranks of those geniuses who understand how to tap their unlimited creative powers. My goal in this program is not just to teach you a new way to make notes. I'm going to introduce you to mind mapping as a whole new approach to thinking and solving problems. My intention is that you'll be using mind mapping as an integral part of your life, and you'll continue to use it for years to come. To gain the insight that leads to this level of long-term application, it helps to have an in-depth understanding of how mind mapping was developed. So let's look further into the roots of Buzan's discovery. In the late 1960s, Tony Buzan began researching methods for improving learning, memory, and creative thinking. He conducted an in-depth study of the habits of effective note-takers. Drawing on the research of Professor Michael Howe, Buzan concluded that the best note-takers shared two distinctive characteristics. They used keywords and printed their notes. Now, why do these techniques make such a difference? Buzan found that keywords are the nuggets of creative association and recall. They're rich in information, so if you think of a keyword, it triggers other important associations. If you were, for example, studying the heritage of the American political system, a keyword might be democracy. Chances are this would trigger many other associations such as freedom, revolution, independence, Jefferson, and so on. Examples of non-keywords include and the. Having mastered language, our minds automatically grammatize our thoughts, so it's a waste of time and energy to record all those tos, ands, or thes. The second technique that sets effective note-takers apart from the crowd is that they keep their notes neat and easy to read. Research reveals that many people scroll their notes in such a hasty fashion that they can't read them later on. The best note-takers print each word to ensure readability. An added benefit is that printing seems to better imprint the word in your memory, so it greatly enhances recall. Once Buzan had identified printed key words as the hallmark of effective note-takers, he sought further improvements. Since people usually take notes on subjects they consider important and worth remembering, Buzan focused on improving the memorability of printed keyword notes. Knowing that emphasis and association are the two key elements of recall, Buzan brainstormed on how to bring more of these two elements to printed keyword notes. He identified a number of highly effective techniques. First, he graphically showed linkages between keywords by connecting them with lines and arrows. He also introduced codes and colors to show relationships. Next, he developed methods for showing the emphasis or relative importance of words. He found that the relative importance of keywords could be indicated by the size and boldness of letters, by the use of upper and lower case letters, and by drawing symbols and pictures. Ultimately, it became clear that anything that creates association can be used to create emphasis, and vice versa. Can you use symbols for association? Certainly. Can you use colors for emphasis? Of course. As Buzan started putting these elements together, he began to realize that he was creating much more than a new way to take notes. He realized that he had discovered a method for awakening genius. Why is it that mind mapping strikes such a responsive chord with people everywhere? Why does it work so well for people from every culture, country, age group, and walk of life? Mind mapping works because it's an expression of your brain's natural functioning, a catalyst for your natural thinking process. As you discovered in the speech preparation test, your mind doesn't work naturally in outline and paragraph form. It works best when you integrate the input from both your logical, analytical left brain and your imaginative, colorful right brain. Mind mapping rescues your right brain output, previously relegated to the realm of doodling and daydreaming, and makes it a contributing partner in your thinking and problem-solving activities. Mind mapping feels so right for another reason, too. It reflects an understanding of natural systems and networks. Contemplate a tree, and you'll note that it's a network of life expanding in all directions from a trunk. Consider a great river as it rushes to the ocean, and you'll see it's born from a network of innumerable smaller tributaries. Look to the skies, and you'll discover that our solar system is a dynamic network revolving around the sun. And perhaps the most amazing of these natural systems is the brain itself. Your brain is an extraordinarily complex network composed of billions of neurons or brain cells. Each neuron has many tentacle-like arms called dendrites that branch out from its central nucleus. Each of these dendrites is covered with hundreds of tiny mushroom-shaped chemical sacs called dendritic spines. As you think, electrochemical information jumps across the tiny gaps between branches at junctions called synapses. Your thinking is a function of a vast branching network of synaptic patterns. A mind map is a graphic reflection of these natural patterns of the brain. Mind mapping sets you free to do what you've always been capable of doing. It allows you to express the genius that you are. Author Thomas Mann wrote, "We are all infant prodigies." I believe he was right. You are one of a kind. Your birthright is greatness. And on the next side of this tape, you're going to learn how to begin using your brain to access that greatness and awaken the prodigy inside you. The TV show Star Trek begins with the words, "Space, the final frontier." On this cassette side, I'm going to take you on a journey through the truly ultimate frontier, the human brain. Your brain is designed through millions of years of evolution to be the most profoundly powerful success mechanism in the known universe. Its capacity is far greater than the most powerful computer ever invented. And you have the ability to harness and direct that power to make your dreams come true. Right now, as you're listening, Your 30 billion brain cells are shimmering with over 100,000 chemical reactions every second. The neural circuitry of your brain is conservatively estimated to be at least 1,400 times more complex than the entire global telephone network. The number of possible thought patterns that your brain can make is significantly greater than the number of atoms estimated to exist in the universe. The potential of the brain is clearly vast, virtually unlimited. But what percentage of that potential do we actually use? Well, the best estimate in the 1950s was about 50%. In the 60s, researchers estimated that we used 10% of our brain's power. In the 70s and 80s, that estimate went down to about 1%, and now we're saying 0.1% or less. So, either the human race is getting dumber, or the potential of the brain is greater than we thought. I'm happy to report that it's the latter. The potential of the brain is greater. It's inspiring to know the extent of our birthright, but what prevents us from fully accessing it? Why is it that we use such a small percentage of our vast inheritance? The most fundamental answer is fear. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of embarrassment, fear of change. Fear is usually bred early on in our lives. If we didn't get it at home, we often get it in the first few years of school. Think back to first, second, and third grade. Remember the day that the teacher asked a question, and one of the kids in the class, maybe it was you or maybe it was someone sitting next to you, was very enthusiastic about answering. Ooh, I know the answer. Ooh, teacher, please call on me. And the teacher called on that very enthusiastic child, who then blurted out a truly original, creative, expressive answer. But on that day, the teacher said, "No, that's not the answer I was looking for." And the other kids in the class said, "Ah, ha, ha, what an idiot, what a jerk, nah, 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 nah." And inside every student's brain that day, a thought to the following effect probably developed: never, ever, ever do that again. Most of us learned early on that we were not rewarded for originality, creativity, or self-expression, but rather for feeding back the right answer to the person in authority. The actual thinking skill that tends to be rewarded in most schools and businesses is pleasing authority and jumping through hoops and labyrinths to find the right answer instead of thinking for oneself. The fear of failure translates into a pattern of negative thinking, which I call the I can't. I can'ts are negative, self-fulfilling prophecies that link the mind and body in a vicious cycle of fear, failure, and loss of confidence. Classic I can'ts include: I can't sing, I can't draw, I can't do mathematics, I can't do public speaking, I can't be happy, I can't make enough money. The list goes on and on. Let's examine a few of these very common I can'ts, beginning with I can't sing. This pattern also tends to develop in the first few years of school in a scenario like this. It's choir day at school, and Billy is having some trouble hitting the notes. It's brought to his attention when the teacher stops the class and says, "You seem to be off key. Let's hear you sing by yourself." Well, Billy is terrified and embarrassed. The other kids are laughing. What happens to the vocal cords under that kind of pressure? They contract. What happens to the quality of voice? Obviously, it gets worse. What then happens to the audience reaction? More laughter and ridicule. It's likely that Billy will just shut down and say, "I can't sing," and for the rest of his life, he probably won't sing. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy on a psychophysical level. Another classic is, "I can't draw, I'm not artistic." It's art class in the third grade, and all the kids are busy drawing elephants. At the end of class, the teacher hangs every drawing on the wall except for little Johnny's. His isn't good enough. Susie's fate is even worse. Her highly original interpretation of an elephant is hung on a separate wall and offered to the class as an example of what an elephant doesn't look like. Both Johnny and Susie are mortified. They think I can't draw, and for the rest of their lives, they don't even try. One of the most common I can'ts is the fear of public speaking. The reason it's such a profound and intimate fear is that failure in this realm is something most people have experienced or witnessed. It's related to the sense of rejection that comes from the ha 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 you idiot syndrome that we just described. The real fear underlying public speaking is the fear of humiliation and embarrassment. In survey after survey, Americans rank public speaking as their #1 fear, greater than nuclear war, financial ruin, or getting mugged. The fear of death ranks about 7th on the list. In other words, most people would rather die than be embarrassed. In all the I can'ts, whether it's I can't sing, I can't draw, do public speaking, mathematics, dancing, whatever it happens to be, it's important to understand that the I can't is a choice and that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, the good news is that the opposite is also true. When you say I can in regard to any area of endeavor, you activate those 30 billion brain cells to find a solution, to achieve a goal, to learn whatever discipline you choose. Individually and organizationally, things get done by people who think I can. Of course, it's crucial to make a distinction between a common sense, practically applied, intelligent I can approach and delusional positive thinking. Perhaps you've heard some of the one-dimensional approaches to positive thinking that advocate affirming, I'm now rich, I'm now fabulous, I'm now wonderful, and everybody loves me. And while you're reciting this list of dreamy affirmations, you get run over by a bus or fall into a ditch because you're totally out of touch with reality. I'm not advocating some kind of self-delusional auto-hypnosis, but rather a simple, practical attitude that's based on scientific research into the potential and natural functioning of your brain. When you start with an accurate perception of your current reality, and then you say, I can, to any endeavor, in any discipline, it's the functional equivalent of turning your brain on and accessing your unlimited potential. The I can attitude awakens and organizes your power to create and learn. It energizes the discipline required for achievement. By creating a picture of success in your brain, you create a roadmap to follow and reach your goals. As a student and teacher of high performance and accelerated learning for more than 20 years, I've developed an ever-deepening respect for the sovereignty of commitment and persistence. These are the values that lead to real accomplishment, and an I can attitude is the key to living these values. Of course, it's easy to maintain an I can attitude when everything is going your way. The real test comes when things aren't going so well. A few years ago, as part of my research into high performance, I was invited to attend a baseball camp conducted by Walt Hriniak, then batting coach for the Boston Red Sox. The campers included little leaguers, Babe Ruth players, college players, a few minor leaguers, and a number of the game's top professionals. Hriniak, who studied with the legendary Charlie Lau, is a true baseball guru and master coach. He began the camp with words I'll always remember. He said, I don't care who ya. I don't care if you're a little leaguer or if you're one of the top pros in the game making millions of dollars a year. I don't care who you are. Someday, you're gonna stink. Hriniak went on to point out that even the greatest hitters in the game go through slumps, and that in baseball, as in life, your accomplishments are ultimately a function of how you respond to apparent failure. His belief is echoed by psychologist Karen Horney, who discovered that what most people label as failure is most often a function of withholding commitment. In other words, they simply give up in the middle of a slump and call the experience a failure. They tell themselves, see, there's proof, I can't do it. There's no doubt that this negative thinking undermines perseverance. In his book, Learned Optimism, Dr. Martin Seligman points out that pessimists tend to give up when faced with challenges. Therefore, their rate of failure is greater even when success is attainable. They've mastered the dubious knack of snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. On the other hand, Seligman's extensive research shows that optimists do much better at work, in school, in sports, and relationships. They regularly exceed the predictions of aptitude tests, and their health is unusually good. Evidence suggests that they may even live longer. Pessimists can learn to be optimists by changing their habits of thinking when faced with apparent failure. The most successful people treat adversity as their teacher. All their life experiences become grist for the mill of personal and professional growth. Whatever they attempt, whatever obstacles confront them, they see themselves succeeding, renewing their commitment and accessing their creativity to achieve their goals. Understanding the scope of your brain's potential makes optimism a logical choice. It clearly makes sense to adopt an I can attitude, to become a conscious optimist. You can continually deepen your compassion, understanding, wisdom, and effectiveness by committing yourself to learning from every strikeout, mistake, and apparent failure. You can choose to persevere in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. You can think I can when those around you say you can't. And if you do, your success is inevitable. Conscious optimism is an essential component for successful living in a world in which nothing seems to stay the same for very long. We live in an age where the pace of change takes place at dizzying speed. Political, social, and technological revolutions sweep the globe overnight. Communication is transformed. We take for granted our ability to witness history-changing events. We watch political systems crumble. We see dramatic rescues. National leaders are assassinated before our eyes. New inventions are unveiled. New records set. Space shuttles launched. Volcanoes erupt. Historically speaking, we experience miracles every day. New possibilities await us around every corner as the future merges into the present. And as the pace of change accelerates, our ability to plan on a predictable future shrinks on a daily basis, and we're forced to live in the present. For many of us, that means living in the fast lane. It seems each day there's more information for us to process, new skills we need to master, more to do. But the time available to keep up with change seems to get shorter and shorter. There's an old Chinese curse that says, "May you live in interesting times." These may well be the most interesting times that humanity has ever known. Depending upon how you look at it, the pace of change can be either a curse or a great blessing. Today, we have more options and possibilities than ever before. There are more opportunities to learn, to create a life of our own design, to understand the universe, to generate wealth, to travel the world, to communicate. Ours is an age of unprecedented opportunity. But we also face the complexity and uncertainty that comes with these possibilities. To make that old Chinese curse a blessing, we must maintain an I can attitude in the face of chaos. Conscious optimism is just the beginning. We must also learn a new approach to thinking that allows us to thrive on complexity, chaos, and change. And that new approach is mind mapping. In order to master this new way of thinking, you also need a deeper understanding of the mechanisms of your mind. As you develop this understanding, you'll be able to apply the practical techniques I'm going to teach you, techniques that will tap your radiant intellect by liberating your full brain power. Fortunately, we're beginning to understand the workings of the human brain, the greatest thinking and problem-solving mechanism ever created. In the past 15 years, we've learned 90% of all that we know about the brain. We're just beginning to plug that information in to a practical approach for improving access to intelligence. Some of the most important research on the brain is the work on the two hemispheres conducted by Professor Roger Sperry, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology in 1982. Sperry studied the impact of different types of learning tasks on brain waves. He found that when his subjects focused on tasks involving logic, language skills, mathematical reasoning, details, and analysis, their left brain hemispheres tended to become more active, while the right hemisphere went more into a resting state. When participants were asked to focus on tasks involving rhythms, colors, shapes, daydreaming, imagination, and synthesis, their right hemisphere tended to become more active, while the left hemisphere went into a resting state. Sperry and his colleagues observed that most individuals seemed to have a tendency to operate primarily in either the logical left brain mode or the more imaginative right brain mode. Of course, as soon as Sperry's work was published, people began asking whether one mode of thinking was superior to the other. A look at some of the great geniuses of history provides an insightful answer. Let's take Albert Einstein, one of the greatest brains of the 20th century. What was Einstein's dominant mode? Was he a more left-brain, analytical, logical thinker, or a more imaginative right-brainer? Well, we know he was a great physicist and mathematician. That would certainly require exceptional analytical and technical ability. But what were his other interests? Well, Einstein loved to play the violin. He loved painting and sailing. But his most important activity, by his own statement, was to play daydreaming games on a daily basis. Einstein used to schedule into every day enough time to just let his mind flow freely. He'd make a point of going out for a walk and spending time in nature as part of his actual working process. One day, early in his career, as he was strolling along a grassy hillside on a sunny day, he decided to lie down and let his mind wander. When he closed his eyes, he could feel the sunbeams against his eyelids, and he imagined what would it be like to ride out into the universe on a sunbeam. So in his mind's eye, Einstein went surfing out into the cosmos on a beam of light. Whoosh! Following that sunbeam to the ends of the universe, he was amazed and surprised that he returned to the very place where he'd started. Now, if you travel in one direction forever and come back to the place where you started, what does that tell you about the nature of the universe? Well, Einstein instantly recognized that it must be curved, a critical revelation that led him to the theory of relativity. Of course, Einstein also possessed the discipline, the technical and analytical ability, and the vision to translate that imaginative leap into the language of science so that others could understand it too. Now, if you were a physicist or mathematician studying Einstein, getting to the point where those numbers, equations, and codes were beginning to make sense to you, what would take place in your mind at the moment that you understood the theory? What might you say? Aha, now I see. Now I get the picture. You'd create your own picture of the universe. And at that moment, you would experience logic and imagination working together in perfect harmony. Let's look at another genius, Sir Isaac Newton. Newton is often thought of as the ultimate logical mind, the creator of our orderly universe. You can imagine what chaos it must have been before he came along and discovered gravity. Things floating everywhere. But in addition to his logical prowess, Newton also possessed a vivid imagination and a childlike sense of wonder. In describing his own process of scientific inquiry, Newton wrote, "I seem like a small boy playing on the seashore, diverting himself and then finding a smoother pebble or prettier shell than ordinary, while the greater ocean of truth lay undiscovered all about me." Newton's scientific approach combined open-minded, imaginative, playful curiosity with the discipline of rigorous experimentation. One of his great works, The Optics, was inspired when a glass broke in his cabin. The sun, streaming through his window, hit the glass, creating a prism effect. He was so fascinated that he collected all the glass he could find, smashed it up, and wrote in his journal, "I filled my cabin with rainbows." Newton was a mystic, a metaphysician, and a dreamer, as well as an accomplished physicist and mathematician. Like Einstein, his genius hinged on a synergy of intuitive imaginative and logical analytical thinking modes. As we look through the history of science, or even business for that matter, it's hard to find a breakthrough discovery that was not made as the result of a dream, by chance, or on accident. Some serendipitous happening that shifted the individual out of the habitual mode of thought. The ones we call geniuses are those who, rather than ignoring the material of their dreams or daydreams, integrate them with their knowledge to create breakthrough discoveries. They utilize the best of both thinking modes, their balanced brains. But what about artists? We tend to think of artists as living on the fringes of the right hemisphere. Many people imagine that the average artist's diary, if he had the discipline to keep one, might read something like this. Arose 11:45 a.m. Drank 3 cups espresso coffee. Smoked mind-altering substance. Sloshed paint on canvas. Mushed it around. Sold for enormous sum. Debauched for rest of day. When we look at the diaries of the great artists, however, we find something very different. The successful artist's diary is more likely to read like this. Thursday, July 1st. Continuing work on painting number 7, Shadow Dancer series. Placed 0.03 milliliters of magenta and 0.02 milliliters of cadmium red, 17.6 centimeters down from the corner of the canvas, 18 centimeters in, to juxtapose with the color combination I placed there yesterday, so that when viewed under the following light conditions, it'll have the following effects on the eyes of the viewer. Incredible attention to detail, analysis, and discipline, all setting the stage for the creative act. Successful artists know that creativity is a function of whole brain harmony. Without organization and logic, creativity is stillborn. Perhaps the greatest brain of our Western culture, the last person to master both science and the arts, was Leonardo da Vinci. Have you ever seen da Vinci's scientific journals, his studies of water flowing, or his sketches of human anatomy? If you have, you know their works of fine art, evocative, expressive, and alive. If you've ever seen the plans for his paintings and sculpture, you know their works of fine geometry, detailed, disciplined, exacting. Da Vinci was the ultimate balanced brain, perhaps our greatest genius ever. Since Roger Sperry's original experiments in the 60s and 70s, there's been an explosion of interest and research into the functioning of the two hemispheres. It turns out that the left-right dichotomy is not as clear-cut as it first seemed. The left hemisphere appears to be capable of doing the work of the right under certain conditions, and vice versa. Handedness, gender, and in some cases language differences all seem to affect the division of labor between the hemispheres. Nevertheless, Sperry's original work established the left and right hemispheres as metaphors for these two modes of thinking. But even if you'd never heard about Sperry's discoveries, even if you didn't know about Da Vinci and the other great brains of history, wouldn't it just be plain old common sense to recognize that you function at your highest level when you integrate the skills of logic with the skills of imagination? Unfortunately, it's the kind of common sense that's rarely applied. Although our society often pays lip service to the idea of the balanced Renaissance individual, in practice we suffer from a dramatic case of half-witted thinking. Much of our schooling builds in a left-brain bias. When you went to school, what were the first 3 subjects on which you were really graded, judged, and evaluated? Most people answer the proverbial 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. The emphasis was largely on the logical, analytical mode of thought. Now think back to those early years of school. Remember the child who got an A in reading, an A in writing, and an A in arithmetic? How is that child referred to by parents, teachers, and peers? Usually as college material, head of the class, very bright. What about that child, on the other hand, who excelled at tapping out innovative rhythms on their desk, who loved to make the most colorful doodles on their paper, who looked out the window and had the most wonderful daydreams, and who was first in the class to make imaginative comments to the teacher? How is that child referred to by parents, teachers, and peers? Hyperactive, a problem child, needs remedial help, learning disabled. The same split still exists today. If there's a cut in your school budget, what subjects tend to be eliminated? Usually it's art, physical education, drama, music, and then languages. And generally someone explains that we're getting back to the basics. But whether you look to the latest brain research or examine the thinking styles of the great geniuses, or just use plain common sense, it's clear that the basics are the skills of logic and imagination taught in harmony. The question then becomes, having grown up in an environment that did not encourage us to be balanced, what can we do now to balance our brains? How can we create a more balanced brain for ourselves personally? How can we create a more balanced brain in the workplace? How can we create a more balanced brain at home? These are the questions we'll explore when we continue on the next cassette side.